Imagine staring out at the stars, looking for a purpose, and finding it. You can't have sacrificed everything to fulfill it, only to learn that your story doesn't have a happy ending. What would you do? I've started writing and rewriting this script over and over again, and I haven't been able to find the message. What am I writing about? Why do I think it's important? These are questions that go on in my head while making a video to stop myself from being just another white dude that makes video essays. And sometimes those answers are hard to come by, and sometimes they just seem to hide from me. Something like Outer Wilds could be a commentary on the finite time given to us and have an overall message about how even though we won't be here to see what happens next, it doesn't mean that you didn't contribute to it. However, stories aren't always that simple, are they? I mean, parallel in the same story, there could be another commentary about fate and destiny and how some choose to hide the truth from themselves and others to cope with the horrifying reality that they don't matter. It's at the intersection of these stories where we find Outer Wilds Echoes of the Eye. I've already made a video about the base game, and I encourage you to watch it as well. However, it's not necessary. I'll go through 3 different parts throughout this video. The story, the people, and my personal thoughts. There will be spoilers and recommend playing the game for yourself before watching this video. With that said, let's get into it. There's a lot to go through here, so I'll make it brief. The DLC has a slow start. In fact, you need to actually trigger it to start it in the first place. And you do this by messing around the 2 new areas, which are the radio tower and the deep space satellite. You see, the satellite takes pictures of the entire solar system and is used as research back on Timber Hearth, but it also acts as part of your GPS. Now, when we get here, one of the pictures looks a little off, so we go and conduct our own investigation of the satellite. And as we wait for the degrees in the satellite to match the picture, we see now would be the perfect time to subscribe. Once we've waited long enough, things get a little weird, and we are introduced to the Stranger, a long-abandoned spaceship hiding in plain sight. Once inside, you begin to learn of another alien species that we will refer to as the Alk. Just like the Nomai from the main game, the Alk found the other universe, but unlike them, they actually made it. And once they learned of the true purpose of the Eye, they decided to hide it from anyone seeking it by blocking the signal it emits. In their journey to the Eye, they destroyed their homeland to make what we know as the Stranger. And since they had nothing to go back to, they created a simulation of their planet that they could live in through their dreams even after death. Now, not everybody agreed with their philosophy. One Alk in particular decided to leave the dream world and release the Eye signal for only a second, allowing it to travel out and be intercepted by the Nomai, which allowed them to traverse through space and crash in Dark Bramble, which kicked off the events of the main game that we know today. You learn all of this by exploring the Stranger using light as your guide. It powers everything from your boats, to doors, to secret doors, and it even becomes more important in the dream world, a simulation created so the Alk could act like they never destroyed their home. This is where you'll find all of the big secrets, as well as learn about some of the best mechanics in a game I have ever played. This simulation has its flaws, like a lot of them, which involve accessible dev tools, traversing out of bounds, and the sheer power of suicide. Of course, these are all not easily obtainable. While the Alk may seem dead on the surface, they are very alive and well in the simulation, and they are very protective of their secrets. Each of them is hidden in a different part of the simulation, which each represents a part of their home planet. Of course, this wouldn't be Outer Wilds if everything wasn't on a timer, and I'm glad to say that this is the most densely packed 22-minute loop in the entire game. Everything is on a timer. For example, the dam will break, which takes multiple buildings with it. Parts of the dream world are not accessible after a certain time. Even the position of the Stranger changes. And I'm not just talking about a simple orbit either. The Stranger actively tracks the sun as it progresses into the supernova, allowing for it to escape its range safely. The Stranger keeps an air about it, where a new mystery can be found around any corner, and even though it's an empty spaceship, its eeriness never seems to leave. It's like you're always being watched. Now, the Alk are very interesting people. On the surface level, they seem to have this American Gothic style about them, in their garbs and their architecture. They were obviously insanely intelligent. They made a Halo spaceship with a cloaking device, they made a dream world of their own planet they could live in, and not to mention they silenced what some would call a celestial horror. In fact, their story almost mirrors the Nomai exactly. Their reaction to the Eye of the Universe was the exact opposite of each other. The Nomai did all but call the Eye their god, while the Alk actively despised and scorned the Eye, going so far as to burn monuments to it and history related to it, hoping that erasing it would bring them closer to going back to the way things were. What's interesting and something I don't think I've heard anybody else talk about is when we mention how the different reactions to the Eye of the Universe impacted the Alk and the Nomai, we never mention how the Nomai never learned the Eye's true purpose. We can assume through Solanum's interaction at the campfire before the end of the game that at least part of the Nomai would have continued their work to get to the Eye, leaving another group to splinter off and defy the Eye like we see the Alk do, but that's really all speculation. The truth is, the developers made you root for the Nomai in the base game. You both were after the same goal, and even though they were dead, learning of their fate inside the Interloper still hits you like a truck. Because our main characters lost. Mobius Games did the exact opposite in Echoes. Your introduction to the stranger involves watching the sun black out. The actual entrance to it is dark and mysterious, where they make it apparent early on that light is going to be your only friend. Oh, and it's a horror DLC. They have you navigate an abandoned spaceship looking through burned slide reels that show a people making the greatest discovery ever and losing everything in the process. It's hard to say exactly what the Alk thought the Eye of the Universe was, but it's safe to say they believed in it. They tore their planet apart and hedged everything on the Eye, being the answer to all their problems, all because they had hope. I think that as the character, we're supposed to relate more to the Nomai, but I feel like, as myself, I relate more closely to the Alk. When I left to go to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be an entertainer, and I'd been doing theater since middle school, so I went with that. And I was excited. But when I got here and I learned what the next 4 years of my life was going to be like, I just felt miserable. I mean, of course, I hadn't destroyed my home like the Alk did, but I took a bet and I lost. It's not a bad thing. And I mean, unlike the Alk, I don't plan on hiding myself in a fantasy land of my creation. This story that Outer Wilds presents us is not just about the journey into different aliens or hubris or failing in our prospects, but instead about how people respond to hardship, and those that cave into it fail, and those who fight and overcome it create something better. So I'll ask you again. Imagine staring out the stars, looking for a purpose, and finding it. You cannot have sacrificed everything to fulfill it, only to learn that your story doesn't have a happy ending. What would you do?